the Solo Coach Podcast.
Good morning, Zoe.
Good morning, David. Good morning, listeners.
Welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you. And yeah, I said good morning. I mean, whenever you're listening, maybe it's afternoon,
Yes.
maybe it's evening.
Good morning, good
It's
afternoon, good
morning
evening
here,
to the
and it's a good
listeners.
morning. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great to have you here. And thank you for listening to everyone out there. So my friend Zoë Bishop has got so many roles. I almost can't list them all, but a few highlights are she's a professional encourager. She's the founder of the Blessed Before You're Dressed movement. She's the communications and partnerships coordinator for Renew HG1, a charity based in Harrogate, and a Yawa radio presenter. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And we met about 8 months ago at a business networking event where you came and found me, and it was my first ever business networking event, and you came and positively encouraged me, and I went away feeling great about the event, about myself, and that led to me attending loads more business networking events and feeling a little bit more confident every single time. So thank you very much for that, Zoe. And we've since attended a few business networking events together. I had the honour and privilege of coming to a wellbeing day led by yourself and Joe at the Flower Patch, and we led a stand together at the Harrogate Kindness Festival, which was awesome. I've never done anything like that before. So there's lots for us to get into today, but first I want to just hand you the floor to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yeah, thank you, David. What a lovely intro. Yeah, and it makes me realize, like, how much, we've done together, and it's amazing to have you in my tribe. And I still remember the first networking event, which I know they can be quite daunting. But I always try and positively, encourage people who might be there for the first time and just tell them, like, what the main thing is, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it and be yourself, because then kind of everything else will happen for you. So my name is Zoë Bishop, and I run my own wellbeing business called Torchlight Wellbeing. So everything that I kind of do all fits under that wellbeing umbrella, like whether that is professional encouragement, coming alongside people to be a cheerleader, or whether that is running wellbeing days, accountability clubs, positivity pauses, or whether it's the gratitude piece. I'm a huge advocate of gratitude, and set up my Blessed Before You're Dressed kind of mantra a couple of years ago, and have then just been like expanding on that. So it's anything that's kind of well-being. I base a lot of my expertise and content just around lived experiences, particularly for solo business owners, where it is really important, I think, to have people around you to encourage you, because often it can be a bit of a lonely place. So that's kind of me, like, in a nutshell. And then I'm a mum. I have 2 girls, and that's probably my biggest role, full-time role, 24/7. Which I think we're going to talk about a bit more about that today. So I'm just really looking forward to the convo, because every time we catch up we have really good dialogue. So I'm excited.
Absolutely. And once again, it's great to have you here. We always say after our conversations, we should record this and release this as a podcast. And we're finally doing it for the second time, actually. So as you're describing sort of your life and what you do in a nutshell there, I wanted to pick up on gratitude, if we may. So for someone listening who, a bit like myself, 5 years ago, kind of knew what the word meant, but didn't really understand what it's all about, what it means, how it works, and why it matters, I wondered if you could kind of enlighten us.
So I think kind of for me, it's always been something I brought up with. Like, I do have a strong Christian faith, and there's a lot of gratitude kind of centered around that. But it's also, for me, gratitude is just about kind of stopping to take notice of those little things that we often take for granted. And it's also about intentionally like looking for those things and being grateful for those things. And, whether you're just grateful to God or whether you're grateful to the universe, it's just, I found for me like such an impactful practice. So that's kind of why I started Blessed Before Your Dress, because for me, it was about waking up and that first thought being something that you're grateful for. And that is not, these big, massive things. It can be the tiny things, like the cup of tea, the fact that you're actually, opening your eyes up. It can be anything. But I find if you start your day like with that kind of gratitude mindset, being thankful for the opportunities that are going to happen, that day, then it's had a really big impact on my life. And so much so that's kind of why I've set up Blessed Before Your Dress, because I want to share that message with people. And just another thing I would say is we are constantly bombarded with negativity, like across, every single day through, media, socials. So actually stopping to kind of, be grateful and look for those, blessings can be really helpful in a world of negativity where like, 80% of our thoughts are actually negative as well. And this negativity kind of sticks to our brain like Velcro. So you kind of have to work at, unsticking that Velcro and putting different things in there to kind of rewire the brain, and so that, you're not always thinking of the worst. So yeah, that's kind of just my story with gratitude.
Thanks, Zoe. I recently read a book that was talking about the negativity bias that a lot of us have. Even from being if you show a baby a load of photos, it will always be, its eyes will be drawn to the sort of, if you show them photos of faces, its eyes will be drawn to the negative faces. And that made a lot of sense to me, because I've always found like the last few moments before going to sleep and the first few moments of waking up in the morning the hardest in some ways, as it's easy to be sort of a little bit full of dread of, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, what could I have done better today? All these things I've got to do today, or all the things I've got to do tomorrow. It can be quite overwhelming just before you go to sleep, which is the last thing you want to go to sleep thinking
Absolutely.
about. And
Yeah.
I will just add, it was starting a gratitude practice 5 years ago during the pandemic that for me changed that, because initially it was a bit clunky writing down a list of things to feel grateful for from the day and a list of things I appreciated, and I had to really search for what to write, even just little things. But then over time that practice became a habit, and I actually saw things throughout the day that I wanted to put in my journal, and sometimes even went and put them in my journal during the day rather
Yeah,
than
that's
waiting
it.
until the end of the day. And
That's
instead of
it.
becoming like this, oh, I have to search for 10 things that I feel grateful for example, by the end of the day, my mind was flooded with what I felt grateful and thankful for, which I will say was a lot better than focusing on what I'd not done that day, what I'd done badly, the things I'd said that could have had a negative impact, etc., etc.
Yeah. And there's actually a lot of scientific evidence out there to that supports, having a gratitude practice just before bed and actually supporting like sleep patterns, and it helps you get to sleep. So yeah, and I loved what you said there about, you were searching for it and it kind of was a bit clunky, taking a bit of time, but then as you go on, suddenly you are finding more stuff that, oh, I actually want to write this down now so I capture it. And I think that's kind of the essence of what I've realized and learned and drawn on, is it's kind of the more things that you are grateful for, the more there is to be thankful for. So it's kind of, I don't know, like a domino effect. I guess that's, how you can explain it. But what I would say is that you have to be consistent with it. Like, and as we all know, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have read James Clear's Atomic Habits, but you have to keep showing up and you have to keep doing it. But eventually, if you do, then it becomes one of those really healthy habits that, you're getting benefit from every single day.
And I will add a little bit like I do a daily morning yoga practice that I started in the pandemic again with YouTube. And I can't necessarily tell you the benefits of when I do it, but what I can tell you is that when I don't do it,
Yeah.
especially if I don't do it for several days in a row, I just start to feel a bit icky and a
Yeah,
bit
you do.
rubbish in myself, and I can't really put my finger on why.
Hmm.
And when I restart that practice up again, it's sort of that moment of that's that's why I was feeling a bit crap.
Yeah,
I stopped
exactly.
doing it. So I wanted to ask you, Zoe, I've got a client actually who's been bought a beautiful leather-bound gratitude journal, and he's almost not sure when to start it. And he gets it out now and again and shows it me. And initially was thinking of starting it at the start of the year, and then thinking of starting it at the start of a new month. And it remains this beautiful leather-bound book that spends its time in a box that's vacuum sealed. And my question is around if someone is wondering when's the right or the best time to start with a gratitude practice, what would you say to that?
I'd say now, like, just go for it. And just, even if that is to start with thinking in your head, just, and like I do, soon as I wake up, okay, what can I be thankful for? Maybe that was something the day before. Maybe it's something that you're excited about. Maybe it's just, the blanket that you've got, your pajamas, your slippers. Like I would say just maybe try it. And even if that's one flighting, thing, and therefore, that doesn't necessarily have to be written down. Um, maybe that's just, a good thing to start your day with, which is what I find. But I would honestly, I just say sometimes we keep these, things that are just perfect and we just want them to just kind of sit there. But actually, you're going to get more use out of them if you do use them. So, or, maybe try and then in the evening, just before bed, put it by your bed. If you're really proud of the book and you like it, then maybe it would be nice to have it next to your bedside table. And then it does act as that reminder, so you could do it first thing, you could do it just before bed, but maybe I would just start like just by doing one thing, like, and just when it feels right to you, because that's the other thing, like, and what you will probably find is that you will start, like, as we both described, you'll probably start to see a few more things. But, if your notebook's there and you want to write it in, just do it. But I would just say, just start now. Don't wait. Like, don't just leave it. Because otherwise that beautiful book is not going to be, used. And you want to fill it with really grateful things and really lovely things. So why not start, like as soon as.
I would agree. Thanks, Zoe. And I mean, there's, I'm a great believer in that when you start something new, kind of like imperfection is the cost of entry of perfection. So this podcast is a great example of that. I knew that it wouldn't be perfect right from the start, and it remains anything but. However, just starting and releasing that first episode led to episode 2 and 3 and 4, and you can see that there's an improvement in each episode. It's getting better, and it was, I had to go through that rough initial learning curve,
Yeah.
having literally no idea how to record it, how to publish it, how to get it on Spotify and YouTube, how to edit it, and just had to push myself through the pain of learning all of those things in order for it to be here now. And I'm sure you've got countless examples of starting things for the first time and how unbelievably hard it is. But
Yeah.
then you look back in a week's time or a month or a year's time and you think, oh my goodness, it's got so much easier and I've got so much better at it. And what started off as a chore, like gratitude journaling, it then becomes more second nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so true with everything. And when we do step out of our comfort zones, we need to get comfortable with discomfort, like, which is not, it's not kind of human nature. And if you've read any of the chimp paradox by Professor Stephen Peters, like he talks about, the chimp, and your chimp's going to be a bit scared, and he's like, whoa, and your kind of protection will come in. But it really is just about getting started and small steps, giving yourself the opportunity to kind of learn and grow, within that discomfort. And I've had so many, clients and friends and just saying, oh, I would never have got there had I not started. But, we've all got to start somewhere. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's funny because what is his lovely book? Yes, it looks lovely, but it's been there. It's been designed to kind of be a gratitude journal. It's been designed to hold all those blessings. So why not, just start today? And maybe your client won't do it every single day, but maybe you just start and do it when you feel like it. But I think it's just that initial start, which is like everything, isn't it? It's that initial bit. Yeah. When you're starting your new business, it is scary. When you're starting a new role, when you're becoming a mum for the first time, like it's all scary. But every day you kind of learn stuff, you get better. And that's, the importance of having people around you to kind of support you in in that journey.
And we get more of what we're looking for, don't we? So if we like that principle, I forget what it's called, if you buy a car of a certain model, and then initially you think, oh, I've got the only one, and then you look once you've got that car and they're everywhere because they've come into your field of vision. And if you're constantly focusing on one thing, such as the negatives, you're going to see and find a lot more
Oh,
of them. I know when I've had bad days, bad weeks, or bad months, I've just found more and more reasons, they call it confirmation bias, to confirm that I'm having a bad week and a bad month.
oh yeah,
It's like drawing it to myself in a sort of like a magnetic effect.
yeah.
But contrast that to when it's been a good week and a good month, and I've been, exercising that gratitude practice.
Mhm.
I've been seeing and noticing things to feel grateful for, reasons to be grateful. It's that principle of, do you focus on the piece of litter in the park, or do you look past that and notice the families that are having great fun in the park and having a picnic?
Yeah,
You can focus on the negatives or the positives in any situation. And I know there's
yeah,
neuroscience behind this, because you wrote an article on LinkedIn last year, didn't you? The neuroscience of gratitude, in case anyone's wondering.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's like, if you pop it in I don't know if you have podcast notes, but maybe pop it in there because
Mm.
there is a lot of, science behind it, and how it is kind of rewiring the brain, like, so to speak. So yeah, and I know for some people that's really important to them, like to have this kind of evidence and this scientific stuff. But it also kind of demonstrates why it is important to do it all the time. And not just, oh, well, I did it once. I tried it once for one day, and guess what, Zoe, it didn't work. And it's like, well, you kind of need to do it a little bit more. You need to keep doing it. And I mean, I've probably been doing it for like 4+ years now. So, I'm at a different point to other people's journeys, but it is that, something that I love talking about is consistency and consistently doing something. And yeah, I was having this conversation with some clients at the beginning of the week, actually, that even when you think you've got there, like, so, even like on those good days, yes, be thankful, but also on those bad days, be thankful too, because you've still got to be consistent with the practice. I think we fall into this trap in society now where we're going for a goal, or, say maybe it's weight loss, and suddenly like, oh, I make this goal and I get there. And then you stop everything that you've done to kind of get there. And it's like, what? Like, why would you stop everything? Because to continue, you need to kind of, keep going with it. And that's, what I've found. And it's, just been amazing for me. And which is why I now love to talk about gratitude and, the benefits, because it has really made a huge difference in my life.
Thanks, Zoe. So you mentioned earlier, well, we were talking about starting something new for the first time, and what you have to push through, and the challenges of starting a new journey. And you mentioned earlier parenthood. And I know we recently had a fabulous conversation, and I wanted to pick up on that again and ask you, what was the journey like of becoming a parent for the first time for you, and what have you learned about yourself through that process?
Yeah, that's huge,
I
huge question.
appreciate that is absolutely massive of a
Yeah.
question.
Um, I think, yeah, like being a parent is the most amazing journey that you can ever go on. There is nothing, I think, that can prepare you for how your life will change when you are responsible for another little human. And yes, there's a lot of stuff that you can do. You can, do a lot of reading. You can, one of my favorite things is I batch cooked before baby arrived. So you have, nice food like in the freezer ready for like, oh, when baby is there. So all these little like, practical things, you could read Gina Ford if that's what you want to do. But I think, and I can never really describe it, but I always remember if just as I was about to kind of go and give birth, I walked out the door and I kind of knew this, like, mother's kind of intuition. They'd said, come to the birth center, we might have to send you home, but just come. And I remember going with my husband Chris and just saying to him, we'll be back, we are going to be back with a baby, like, and it's the bizarrest thing, it is the bizarrest feeling. And then suddenly you do come back and you're like, oh my goodness, this small thing I'm now like responsible for. How am I ever going to do this? But then you've got that mixed in with, love and just, yeah, feeling like, you've just never felt before. And I think every day is a journey and you are learning. And I think, it's a bit of a cliche now, but people do say there is no manual to be a parent. There really isn't. It's about trusting your intuition. It's about, trusting what you think is right for your baby, because you will get a lot of advice, opinion, from so many different people around you, which normally always comes from the best place. But you kind of, I think, your baby, and sometimes you just know what's right. And I don't know where that kind of comes from, but you get used to it. But it is a journey. And even now, so my eldest is 12, my youngest is 9, and still every day is a journey and every day's learning. And you know what? And I hold my hands up every day. I mess up as a parent, like, I don't get things right. But then I try, we have conversations. I think communication is so important. Like, and for me, like I used to talk to my bumps, because so they get used to your voice. And I believe that they could understand me. Like, and people say, why are you talking to them? Because they can't hear you. And I'm like, no, but I actually think they can get to know the tones. And so I would always talk to them. And then even, when I had the baby, it's like, right, we're going to do this today. This is what we're doing. And they're like, say they can't understand you. And it's like, yeah, but I feel like they can understand me. So, and then that then, is really important as, they get older and you start having more conversations. They listen to you, hopefully sometimes, you listen to them. So yeah, it's absolutely huge, the best job in the world. But like everything, massive highs, massive lows, just I can remember just, crying. It was my birthday and Sienna wouldn't sleep or whatever, and you're just on your own, just crying, and because you don't really know why she won't go to sleep. And so there's all these things. But then, just that first smile that you get makes such a difference. And yeah, it is just the most incredible journey I think that you can be on. And I believe children are a gift. Like, they are not mine to keep. They're a gift from God. And I've been kind of entrusted to help them on their way in life. So yeah, that's kind of, I could probably talk for another,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, you know, the rest of the day on it. But yeah, that's hopefully answers some of your questions.
Thank you, Zoe. No, and I'm asking you from the perspective of someone who doesn't have children, and I will caveat for anyone listening, we're not expecting one anytime soon. But I'm just very curious, as I've noticed all of my clients have children, and it's a fascinating topic to me, and I'm wondering, how do you know overall that you're doing a good job? You know, like you said, on those days where the walls are tumbling down and it feels like you're in the middle of a whirlwind, like how do you know that overall you're still doing and saying the right things? And how what
Yeah,
does that
sometimes
look
you
like for
don't.
you?
Sometimes you don't. And that's, I think, is as the kids get older, is you know, the decisions that you're making, like, am I making the right decision, like, for them? And often you won't know. And I think, you know, I've got a lot of wisdom from like mums now who have got older children. And she said, you never do, you know, you never do really know until like later on. But then, you know, there's always like, you know, small wins if you've, I don't know, been talking about something and then, you know, they'll come up to you and repeat, you know, what you've said, or they've actually listened. Like, 'cause I think that is one of the hardest things, is not feeling heard. Like, we all want to feel heard. And I think that is where there is a lot of stress in parenthood, particularly with work, you know, working moms, working dads, when you're trying to get out the door, you know, you just want to be listened to. So please, can you put your shoes on? And when they don't do it for the first time, you're, you know, like, okay, please, you know, we might be a bit late. Please, could you get your shoes on now? And they still don't listen. And then you're like, ah. So it's, I don't know, you know, that you kind of ever know really. But then there are those moments when you think, you know, I have made a difference. And I think for me, like, I am now truly understanding the decisions my mum made for me and my dad. But I've only realized that now, and I'm 45, you know, when you actually start to understand. And I think at the end of the day, think, you know, most of the things you will do comes from love, and it comes from care, and it comes from you know, keeping the most precious thing safe. But when you're trying to explain that to a 12-year-old, that they can't have their own TikTok account, like, even though all their friends have got them, that's not easy. And you are the worst parent in the world. And, you know, yes, I've been told, Mum, I hate you, you don't let me do anything, you know, and you just have to, you know, I guess, like, have a tough skin and just know and that those decisions that you're making now will make a difference, like, in the future, and they will understand, you know, where you've come from. Whether they agree with it or not, I guess, you know, that's up to them. But I think most of the time, you know, you're just trying to do it from a place of love. And yeah, so it's a really tricky one, because sometimes you just, I'd say it's sometimes the most thankless task that you'll ever do. But then you get those moments when Sienna's written me a letter and said, you know, Mum, you know, I've got it up in my office. You are a great person and you inspire me to always have a positive attitude. So that to me, like, you know, is confirmation that at least I'm leading by example, which is one of my own goals, is to lead by example for my kids. And you know, give them tools that they can use, like, and utilize in their life. So you will get those little things like back, and it might not come from a letter, it might just come from something completely different. But, you know, I think that's where it's always good to, you know, have chats, wisdom from other parents, you know, particularly from different ages. It's always good. That's where I find church really helpful, because there is a community there of people that are grandparents, people whose children are older, and then you kind of have that balance that then, yeah, maybe, you know, you can give your thoughts on things to support them. So I think, you know, that's also important for your kids. It's also important for your kids to have relationships, you know, with with others, with people that they trust that aren't you, because you know, there's a different relationship. You know, being an auntie and an uncle, I think, is one of the most special things that you can be, because you're kind of, you know, you're not a parent, you're not a best friend either, but you're just kind of like in between. And I have an amazing relationship like with my auntie, that is like exactly that. So yeah, I guess you never do know, but you do get signs and, you know, things that come back to you that kind of, you know, kind of give you a little bit of hope that you are doing, and you're doing the best you can, like with everything, you know, you are doing the best with what you have available, and it comes from love.
Thanks, Zoe. As you were speaking, the question that came to me was, when you're taking care of this other life, or in your case, two other lives, and nurturing them, looking after their well-being, and how do you still take care of yourself and your own well-being, and that of like your relationship with your partner as well? How do you maintain all of these different relationships,
Yeah,
relationship with yourself being
yeah,
front and center,
yeah,
and not lose yourself in the process?
yeah. And that is such a great question. And what I do kind of say to new parents is, you know, this baby has got to fit into your life as much as you have to fit into theirs. So, you know, and this baby can become, you know, all consuming, which of course, you know, it will be, but it is so important to still do things that you love doing, and, you know, with your partner as well, because you know, often what happens is you kind of become a bit of a tag team. So, you know, because you do, it is important to still do the things that you love. I would just say that you need to kind of carve out time, and you need to be a bit more intentional about how you are going to do that. And just, you know, also realize that it's good for your children to like have a break from you, because you know you are their constant, you are there all the time. And that doesn't mean that you go away for days on end, but you know, maybe it's just half an hour for you to just go and, you know, if you like running, run around the block, or you know, whatever it is that you like to do. But these pockets of time are so important, because as we all know, you can't fill from an empty cup. So, you know, you have to look after yourself. You have to look after your own well-being. And I think that is where sometimes as mothers, you know, or indeed fathers, we don't give ourselves that time, because we are like, right, I must do this, I must always be there, or I have this thing that I have to do. But actually, if you're carving out the time for yourself for doing things that you love, then you're going to be able to be much more of a support, because you're not going to be tired, you know, you're not going to be as tired. So yeah, I'd say that's like really, really important, and particularly, you know, for your relationship. And that is where you can draw from, like, you know, other supports, you know, your friends, your family. But I think it is something that you need to be intentional about, because otherwise you can just go from like, you know, basically, right, I've got to do this for the kids, I've got to do this, I've got to clean the house. Like there's kind of comes an obsession, because it has to be totally clean, because otherwise like there's too many germs and I don't want my kids to pick up germs. And then you go into that kind of, you know, vicious cycle. So it's just about prioritizing some time for you. And that does not mean for you to catch up with the washing or catch up with the washing up. The other thing I say is, you know, when you've got a really, really new baby and people want to help, they can 100% help. Like they can make you a cup of tea. They can, you know, maybe put a load of washing in. They can do a little bit of washing up, empty the dishwasher, and don't be afraid to ask, because people are genuinely, they really want to help, but often they think the help comes in, oh, let me just hold your baby, you know, and have a really nice cuddle while you go off and do all these jobs. It's like, no, like, you know, other people can help. And I think we lose this feeling of control, because suddenly, you know, particularly if you've, you know, been you know, working, and suddenly, like, you know, you're not at work anymore, but you've been, you know, you're really holding really senior position, and suddenly now your life is being ruled by this baby, and you don't have that control. Like you don't actually have that control, you know, because you have to feed at certain times, or, you know, you're not getting as much sleep at night. So yeah, you do need to carve out that time for yourself. It is so, so important, and to be intentional about it. Yeah, so those would be my kind of, you know, things just to think about. But you know, it's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you know, you can't, if your child needs you and your child is sick, or you know, plans change. I think babies are also really clever at knowing like when you've gone out, because I always remember my kids were like, yeah, mum, like you can go out, but now I'm going to wake up like 4 times a night just to kind of let you know that I am your number one priority. So yeah, it's a tough one to balance, but you can, you know, I believe you really can get that balance right.
Thanks, Zoe. I wanted to, you mentioned there about how to support other parents, you know, from the perspective of a parent, allowing people and inviting people and even asking people to help. And I wanted to ask you the question from the perspective of someone who's not a parent. When I have, you know, I'm in my early 30s and a lot of my friends are having children at the moment, how can I best support them when, you know, either the baby's on the way or the baby's arrived and suddenly they've become new parents? Because at the moment I feel always quite clueless as to what to
Mm-hmm.
say, how to
Mm-hmm.
help. Well, quite completely clueless actually, and out of my depth. And you know, when you get that call from a friend and maybe they're going through a hard time, perhaps they've been made redundant or they've lost a grandparent, it's less difficult as you think, okay, I I either I've been through this myself or I've been through something similar, so I can relate and I can offer some of my experience and we can have a great conversation about it. And I've got like a foundation I can stand on. But when it's friends with a new child for the first time, you know, it's like, oh my goodness, what experience do I draw on? Oh, zero.
Yeah, but I think you'll know more than you think. And I think actually in those situations, it is, you know, just chatting to the new parents, say, you know, how can I help you right now? You know, what is it? Is there anything practical that I can do when I come over? Can I bring, you know, a pasta, you know, sauce that I've made, or, you know, and I think just asking, because everyone is like so different. Like it's always good to just ask and say, look, you know, I'm kind of here at your disposal. I can come over for an hour, or we can chat on the phone. But just, you know, tell me. And I think maybe also just as a friend, asking not just about the baby, but asking about them, like, how are you? And just being ready to listen, and being aware that, you know, maybe they will like just suddenly burst into tears. Like, I mean, this is probably more like the very newborn stage, but I think it is genuinely like we've kind of, you know, both been learning over the last 6 months, doing various courses. You just want to be heard, and you just want to feel that someone is interested in you. And so I would maybe, yeah, just ask them, you know, how are you doing? Like,
Mm.
because that's always, you know, then you're gonna, hopefully they'll be honest, and you'll get a true, you know, reflection of how they're going. And then they might bring up some things. Oh, well, this is, you know, I find this really hard. Like, you know, the baby's sleeping, but I can't leave. So maybe then that would open up the opportunity of like, okay, well, you know, if the baby's sleeping, maybe I could come over and just, you know, you just have 15 minutes, you know, going for a walk or doing whatever you like. Um, but yeah, and I think you will be more of a support than you think. And, you know, as particularly like a family member or an uncle or a godfather kind of figure, it's being interested, you know, in the child as well. And just, you know, I think like anything, like you would kind of naturally do anyway, you're just, you know, interested in learning and want to be there for your friend, and also for their child. And but yeah, I think listening and just knowing that their priorities might have to change as well. Like they're not as they can't just come out for a coffee. And I think that is what, as parents, you suddenly struggle with. You're like, oh, hang on a sec, like I've now got to plan for a coffee, or I can't just come for an hour's bike ride. So maybe it's about looking at those things. Say, it was a biker friend of yours that maybe they could come for half an hour, but they couldn't come for like 2 hours. So it's just being mindful of, those little things. But yeah, maybe even practical. Oh, I need to get to the tip, but I can't get, it's just all these little tiny practical things like, oh, I haven't, and you kind of make the tea. That's the other thing I would say is like, particularly with newborns, that, oh, don't wait to kind of be asked, because otherwise it just puts the parent under pressure and they're like, oh, I can't, but please help yourself. So I'd say, yeah, just kind of go in with the attitude of, look, I really, want to support you. I want to chat to you. Let me know if there's, anything I can do practically. Mowing the lawn, like mowing the lawn, or just things like that, where you can be, you can be there practically, but then just listening and, understanding, where they're at. And you'll have a lot, just because you don't have kids, it doesn't mean you don't have a lot of value and knowledge to, support people when, they first bring children into the world.
Thanks. So it feels like there's an invitation there of, typically we might call up and say the famous line, oh, if there's anything you need, you know where I am. Let me know if there's anything you need. And it feels like there's an invitation to still do that, but to go that extra step of sort of trying to anticipate their needs a little bit. And so something as simple as, I just happen to be going to the shops at the moment. I might just drop them a text.
Yeah.
I'm going to the shops. Do you want anything? Or
Yeah.
I've just mown my lawn. Maybe their lawn needs mowing as well. I'll just drop them a text. Do you want me to?
Or even like, oh, I've made a big batch of lasagna. Like,
yeah,
here you go.
Do you want some?
Yeah, I'll just drop this into you. And I think the other thing is when you then start, if first, second, third kids, it's, can you be a support when, the baby's just about to come and suddenly it's the middle of the night and your parents live really far away. So could you be that person that then comes to have the other child? Because that was something, that we had at the time. We were living down south. Our parents weren't like really, really close. So we had to kind of like, rely on friends to kind of step in there and also, just make a bit of a fuss of the other child as well when the new baby comes along. So I think, there's a lot, that you can do. And that role is so important, because sometimes they'll need you for the practical stuff, but sometimes they will also want you to remember them, BC, before children, because you do like, in a way you lose a little bit of yourself, but that's why, like we just talked about, it is important to still remember the things you love to do. But life is different and you do have other responsibilities. It's just like, when you change your job, or you're doing something new, you're doing something for the first time, you just have to shift things around. But that doesn't mean that you can't still do the things you love, and still go out for your bike ride, still go out for a couple of drinks. Just have to kind of plan it slightly more. That's the only thing.
Thanks, Zoe. You mentioned a couple of times as we were speaking, and I wanted to pick up on it with you. Just you mentioned sort of how your faith has supported you through the journey of gratitude and through having children as well, and things like going to church. And I just wanted to ask you, in what ways has your faith supported you through this journey, through the hard times and the good times alike?
Yeah, I think, that has been integral to me. I was brought up like in a Christian home, so it's kind of always been inherent to me. And it's given me something else to kind of hold on to, and that is where the kind of gratitude comes. And even the small things of like saying grace, and just having somewhere, which is what I love about church, is just going somewhere where there is no judgment, and you can just kind of come and have a conversation with God. And I don't really like the word religion. It's like, if you say, oh, Zoe, you're really religious, I'm like, well, I'm like, I don't see myself as religious. I have a relationship with God. Like, and if that's how people choose, if people choose to call that religion, then yeah, I guess I'm religious. But yeah, I just prefer to say I have a good relationship with God, and it's that constant again, like probably why consistency is so important to me. But I think that the great thing about church is the community, and connection, and just the different kind of levels of wisdom that you can draw on from other people from all different ages, different backgrounds. And that's what I've loved seeing with my own children, is they kind of, as they're growing up, they gravitate towards, the teenagers, and they've actually played really important parts in my girls' lives. So much so that, they were, one of them was bridesmaid for a lovely girl, like at the church that we used to go to when we were down south. And again, I think, like what I said before, it's important to have these kind of role models that are not your parents, and they're kind of, they're impartial. They're not, they're not your blood family, they are your church family. And yeah, to me, that's where church makes a huge difference. And I, made a lot of friends within, toddler groups. And yeah, I've just recently celebrated the life of an 83-year-old who I would go to John Lewis, Waitrose, and have a coffee with her with Alara. And you can't, like, that kind of wisdom from other people, is priceless. And that was kind of how she supported me. But then hopefully there's a couple of, lovely ladies at my church now who are just about to have a baby, and you kind of hope then that you can pass that down. And it is all about, that kind of community you feel, being part of another like family. So yeah, and faith just gives me something to draw on in the hard days. When you're self-employed, sometimes, you never know where, your next client is going to come from. So it gives you, hope and belief that God's never going to let you down. He's going to, provide for your every need. So that's been hugely important to me as like a business owner, to know that, whatever happens, everything's going to be okay, because the big man is like, looking after things. So yeah, that's just a little bit of my faith and where that's kind of come from. And often, yeah, I believe he's given me the gift of encouragement, and that's how, like, I'm kind of, fulfilling my purpose in terms of, what I'm doing right now. So yeah, that's kind of, that intuition comes from there. Yeah, that's probably just like a bit of an overview.
Thanks, Zoe. It feels like it's a little bit of a North Star for you to kind of keep you on track and support you when the going gets tough. I think we
Yeah,
can all do with a little bit of support in those times, one way or
yeah,
another.
definitely. It's, and like you said, it's that it is that constant. And maybe you don't have a faith, but you take that from somewhere else, and that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
So if someone's listening and they're thinking, I'm intrigued by what Zoe does, I'm interested in perhaps becoming her next client. How do you work with people, and kind of where can they find you and get in touch?
Yeah, so the best place, like at the minute, I love hanging out on LinkedIn. Like LinkedIn for me has been amazing, like for connections, for posting more about what I do. So yeah, my profile name is Zoe R. Bishop. And there on my profile, you'll find out a bit more about my Encourager program. So that's kind of, how I can work with you on a one-to-one basis. We can look at like 8 real key pillars that have played really important parts of my life. And that's why I've kind of turned it into a bit of a course. And so we'll look at things like consistency, intentionality. Gratitude obviously is a big topic, but also self-talk, loving yourself, time and habits, resting and pausing, and also reflecting and celebrating. So you could maybe, you could choose to come and, follow the whole course, with me. We can do it over weeks, we can do it over months, we can do it, over every other month, or you can just come and have like quick 30-minute, what I call kind of encouragement, power sessions, where we can just, just look at what's going on, and I can give you a bit of just a bit of confidence. And because I think everybody does need a bit of that in their lives, and that's what I found when people say, oh, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a professional encourager, and they're a bit like, oh, well, what does that mean, and what does that kind of involve? And but everyone seems to say, oh, it does sound like it's really needed, it's just good to kind of speak to someone impartial, particularly like if you are a working mum as well. I hope I've got a lot of kind of wisdom, to share, but also to kind of support mums and dads, not through trying to solve all their problems, but to look at, what is going on and actually talk about them. And, you'll know this as a coach, that they'll come up with the solutions themselves, but actually just having a sounding board, and talking about what's going on can just be the kind of catalyst to that realization of, oh yeah. And just being that kind of accountable person, because I think accountability is a really big thing, and having someone there to kind of just check in with you, see how things are going, what things are you doing to support the situation that we might have been discussing. And, through the actual course, we'll look at time and habits. We do worksheets together. We jump on calls. And the feedback that I've had has just been, it empowers people. So, you're not giving advice and saying, do this and do that. You're just looking at how things have worked in your own life, and, coming up with, strategies and to how things they might want to consider, to have like within their own, wellbeing toolbox. So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I've also got a Blessed Before You're Dressed website. But yeah, the best place is LinkedIn. Look at my profile, go to the company page of Blessed Before You're Dressed, go to the BBYD website. Yeah, I'm happy to always come and do talks on gratitude or positivity, or sharing my experiences. But yeah, I love also just like chatting to people, because I love working with so many different people, and just listening. So I always love a virtual coffee, or if you're in like the Wetherby area, or around Yorkshire, Leeds, then just let me know. It would be great to have a conversation.
Thanks, Zoe. And I will say, whether you feel you need it or not, for example, myself, I've never not felt better after having a conversation with you, and I've seen you speak on stage, which was incredibly inspiring. But you've encouraged and positively influenced me in very unexpected ways. Sometimes I'm not even aware of it at the time, but then I'll do something and it'll come back to, oh, this reminds me of a conversation I had with Zoe just a couple of weeks ago. And the work doesn't necessarily happen within the container of the conversation that we've had. Typically, a bit like coaching, it happens days or even weeks later, because you've lit that fire, you've been the catalyst for change, and then the change, you sort of enabled the change to start, and then the change happens over the next few days and weeks, and it's sort of like a ripple effect, a domino effect. So I'm a huge fan and advocate of your work and what you do, and there's massive overlaps between what you do and what I do, of course. But I thoroughly recommend people reaching out and checking out your fantastic new website as well, which has recently gone live. Definitely.
Yes, which just helps me it's kind of tools to kind of support people to write down their own gratitudes, or give out their own gratitudes, or just make someone or feel good with like some affirmation postcards. So yeah, there's some really lovely things there's also journal prompts as well, and I'm a big journaler. So yeah, if anyone else wants to chat to me like about that, yeah, it would just be great to hear from you. And yeah, thanks for all your encouragement to me, David, and I'm glad to hear that it has made a difference. And yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
It's been a pleasure, and for anyone listening, check out the show notes, and I'll put some links to where you can find Zoë and how you can get in touch, and the article that we mentioned earlier in the podcast. I'll stick that down there as well. So all that's to say from me is thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to interview you for the second time. Yeah, farewell. Thank you, Zoë.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. Have a great day.
The Solo Coach Podcast.